What happened with Ferrari and Hamilton in Las Vegas was not just a strategic error or bad luck. It was the brutal exposure of a structural and technical failure that the team has been dragging on for years, culminating in a spectacle of impotence, frustration, and chaos on the most glamorous circuit on the calendar. Ferrari arrived in Las Vegas knowing it had no margin for error. He was coming off a disastrous Brazilian Grand Prix where, in addition to the double abandonment, a growing tension within the team was publicly exposed. In that context, the Nevada street circuit represented more than just a race. It was an opportunity to clean up the image, regain lost momentum, and above all, demonstrate that the SF25 project with Hamilton at the helm had real potential to challenge McLaren and Red Bull. Initial conditions seemed favorable. During free practice on Thursday, the SF25 showed signs of life. In the midst of extremely cold temperatures, which hovered around 10 degrees Celsius at night, the car seemed to adapt effectively to the demands of the track. Long straights interspersed with technical curves and violent braking. It was, on paper, a perfect setting for Lewis Hamilton's experience and talent to make a difference. His radio feedback was clear. The car felt awesome. He seemed comfortable, confident. Even the British press portrayed him as reborn. The intermediate sectors and classification simulations positioned it among the best. It was the most stable Ferrari in cold conditions. But behind that technical optimism was an uncomfortable truth that was beginning to emerge in the data. SF25 worked well only under a very narrow temperature window. If the track went up or down just a few degrees, the car lost grip. And if the rain appeared, performance plummeted. Still, on Thursday night, no one dared to predict the storm that was coming in any sense. What neither the simulator, nor the data, nor Hamilton's instinct could foresee was that all that mirage of performance was going to collapse like a house of cards the moment the Las Vegas sky opened. And with that rain, the internal chaos that has haunted Ferrari for years would also be unleashed. Lewis Hamilton has experienced many critical moments in his career, but what happened in qualifying for the 2025 Las Vegas GP has no comparison. It wasn't just a bad session. It was, without nuances, an absolute collapse. For the first time in his almost 2 decades in Formula One, the 7-time world champion finished last in a qualifying session without a penalty, mechanical failure, or external incident. Just him, his car, and Ferrari's complete technical impotence in the face of the rain. The chaos began in the second half of Q1, when the intensity of the rain increased slightly. It wasn't a deluge, there was no extreme aquaplaning or uncontrollable conditions. It was a level of water that other teams such as McLaren, Mercedes, and even Williams knew how to handle relatively effectively. But the SF25 once again revealed its Achilles heel. It did not generate temperature in the rain tires. This caused massive understeer, unstable braking, and a complete lack of traction exiting corners. The first error was technical. During his fastest lap attempt, Hamilton accidentally hit a marker bollard at turn 14. The image of that cone wedged under his front wing became a perfect metaphor for the night, a driver trapped by an out-of-control car. That simple incident ruined the SF25's aerodynamics and worse, upset the brake cooling and temperature balance in the tires, leaving it with a completely useless lap. The second error was external. At turn 17, Hamilton ran into yellow flags after another driver spun. This forced him to lift his foot right in the only sector where he could gain time. It was an unfortunate situation, but within normal limits. The extraordinary thing came later. The third error, and the most decisive, was communication and perception. At the moment when he could have started a last attempt before the checkered flag waved, Hamilton got up thinking he had seen red lights. In reality, they were still green. On the radio, his engineer Riccardo Adami shouted at him, "Keep pushing," desperately, but Hamilton had already aborted. He mistakenly believed that the session was over. But it wasn't like that. I still had time for one more lap. A final chance. This error was neither technical nor meteorological. It was human. Under extreme pressure, with minimal visibility and after several laps without finding rhythm, Hamilton made a lapse in judgment. The misinterpretation of the lights, coupled with the lack of clear confirmation from the team, sealed his fate. The most shocking thing was not the result itself, but what it symbolized. It was the first time in his entire career that Hamilton seemed vulnerable, lost, without answers. His body language after getting out of the car, his prolonged silence before speaking to the media, and his shocked face, everything indicated that it wasn't just a bad session. It was an emotional fracture. A crack in the image of a driver who rarely loses his composure. Jenson Button, from the microphones of Sky Sports, was lapidary. Hamilton lost focus. He didn't understand which line of control was, and that can't happen at this level. Anthony Davidson, more technical, was even cruder. This car doesn't give you feedback. It's completely disconnected from what the driver needs. What we saw in Las Vegas was not an isolated mistake. It was the product of a series of failed technical decisions, a car that is not up to par, and a team structure that continues to stumble over the same stones. For a driver who came to Ferrari as a savior, finishing last Friday in the table was more than a humiliation. It was a warning. What happened with Ferrari in the Las Vegas GP qualifying cannot be analyzed solely from the point of view of the result. It is a symptom of a deeper illness. It's not just that Hamilton finished last. The thing is that the car, the SF25, once again showed a structural deficiency that has not been resolved for years: its absolute inability to perform in wet track conditions. This phenomenon was evident with Hamilton, who described the experience as driving on ice. He reported extreme understeer. The car would not turn in corners and long braking, indicating a thermal imbalance between the axles. He even mentioned that one of his front brakes crystallized, which is a clear sign that the system was not operating within its ideal thermal range. The crystallization of a brake means that the disc does not reach the minimum necessary temperature, which drastically reduces its effectiveness and affects the entire dynamics of the car. The failure, therefore, is not due to piloting, nor strategy, nor even bad luck. It is a conceptual defect, an error in the design philosophy that Maranello has not been able to correct. And the most serious thing is that this weakness does not only manifest itself in rain. It also results in inconsistent performance when temperatures drop below a certain threshold, which limits the car's competitiveness in many races on the calendar, especially those held at night or in temperate climates. What happened in Las Vegas was no surprise to the veteran engineers within the team. Some had been warning for months that the SF25's rear aerodynamic package, although efficient on a straight line, compromised the generation of load on the rear axle in low grip conditions. But that warning was ignored, in part because of the pressure to maintain competitive top speeds against McLaren and Red Bull. The result was a car that shines in qualifying under ideal conditions, but completely collapses when the environment becomes hostile. And in Formula One, where every detail matters, that type of inconsistency is unacceptable for a team that intends to fight for championships. The Las Vegas GP qualifying was not only a technical catastrophe. It was, above all, an emotional earthquake. What we saw that night was the full exposure of the human vulnerability behind the champion. Lewis Hamilton, who for years was a symbol of dominance, serenity under pressure and absolute control, showed a face that has rarely been seen in his career, that of helplessness. After getting out of the car, Hamilton did not go directly to the wall. There was none of that purposeful walking that usually accompanies a bad session. This time, he stopped next to the SF25, contemplating it for several seconds in silence, as if searching for answers in a machine that had clearly betrayed him. That moment, without words, was more eloquent than any subsequent statement. He was the image of a directionless driver, surpassed not by the competition but by his own team. During the night at the Las Vegas Street Circuit, the event started under artificial lights and a show atmosphere that disguised what for some teams would become a nightmare. The start was clean for many, but the Scuderia Ferrari team already left with a double emotional burden: the disappointment of the classification and the urgency of saving points. The driver Lewis Hamilton started from the last position, a more than difficult one on a track where, although there are overtaking areas, recovering is a titanic task. His teammate Charles Leclerc had achieved a better starting place, but not from a privileged area either. From the first laps it was clear that Ferrari did not have the pace to compete for the front. Hamilton tried to make a comeback, but the balance of the car was still contradictory. In some braking he managed to put the car in others it sailed without control. As the laps progressed, his car lost effectiveness in changes of direction, and each overtaking maneuver became a risk. Leclerc, for his part, tried to stay still, consolidate his position and take advantage of any defect of his rivals. And yet, every pit stop and every phase of the race revealed that Ferrari was far from being in the leading group. The race winner was Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing, who took command with authority and did not look back. Second came Lando Norris, McLaren, crowning another podium for his team, and third was George Russell, Mercedes, who saved important points. The race left Hamilton in 10th position, after a slow comeback and with no real chance of entering the points zone. For Ferrari, the reading is doubly painful. On the one hand, the result reflects the car's inability to fight under normal conditions in a weekend already marked by adversity. On the other hand, he serves as a martyr of psychological damage to the star driver who arrived to resurrect the team, but who witnesses his competitive inability. Hamilton spoke after the race of a worst day, and not knowing how he could have ended up like this. In short, the race not only confirmed what was already feared after qualifying, but also amplified Ferrari's crisis. A car without answers, a team without margin, and a driver at a difficult crossroads. If you want, I can prepare a lap-by-lap chronology of the race or focus on the key moments where Ferrari definitively lost the race. What happened in Las Vegas also broke the emotional bond with the team. Until now, Hamilton had been diplomatic in his statements about Ferrari. He spoke of a process of adaptation, of patience, of finding the way together. But that night, although he measured his words, it was evident that the pilot no longer blindly believed in the project. Trust was cracked. Inside the Ferrari box, the atmosphere was one of contained tension. Riccardo Adami, his race engineer, avoided the media. Frédéric Vasseur, the team leader, spoke of unfortunate circumstances, but offered no concrete solutions. Charles Leclerc, for his part, seemed annoyed, even cynical, when asked about the state of the team. He said that one could not speak of bad luck when the same problem repeats itself for years. That phrase, apparently directed at the car, was also an indirect shot at the team's leadership. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.